Council will call the meeting to order. For the record, is October 18th, 2022 at 4:30 PM. We'll begin this afternoon's work session with roll call attendance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilwoman Strader.
Here.
Councilman Burnt. Councilman Cavanagh.
Here.
Councilman Borton.
Here.
Councilman Hoagland.
Here.
Mayor Simison.
Here. Next time up is adoption of the agenda.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Hoagland.
I move the adoption of the agenda as published.
Second. Motion is second to adopt the agenda as published. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the agenda is adopted. Next item up is the consent agenda.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Hoagland.
I move approval of the consent agenda for the mayor to sign and clerk to attest.
Have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the consent agenda is agreed to. There are no items moved from the consent agenda. So we will move into department commission reports. First item up is with our community development department staff report format discussion. Order, Mr. Hood.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Bill and I are here this afternoon to talk to you about our staff report that you're familiar with and you see pretty much on a weekly basis. We've received some feedback, well, really ever since the template was developed back in 2018. But even more recently, we've received some feedback from some of you, some members in the community, and our own internal staff have even had some comments about how we could make it better. So we looked at this as an opportunity to innovate and improve that template, and we want to run some things by you here this afternoon. Really, we look at it as there's 4 users, and I just mentioned most of them. First of all, staff. So we want to make it user-friendly for staff to compose it and to update it. They still have to do some work. There's still analysis that has to be done. But from putting together the original staff report to updating it with Planning and Zoning Commission's recommendations through the findings document, trying to make that as easy as possible technically to get that done. And then you've got the applicant, right? We want the applicant to understand what's being written in the staff report. In the same vein, the public. The public doesn't read these types of technical reports very often, so we want to make sure that it's clear and concise and the information is upfront and easy to understand. And then kind of the same thing for even our elected and appointed officials. Easy to find information. It's all right there. You know what the issues are going into a project or where staff is at in recommending approval or denial or continuance. So with those users in mind then, and our processes with project docs and Acela and a lot more online information, we're getting comments from other agencies, and Bill will get into this a little bit more, but comments are being submitted separately, and we can simply put hyperlinks to some of those things in the staff report. Hey, fire department submitted conditions, click here and it'll push you to that document. It just opens it up as in a new window or whatever. And you can read the conditions from the fire department as an example. So we really are trying to make the staff report not 50 pages long, but maybe 5 or 6 or 10 pages long. And if you want more information on a specific thing, you click that and it takes you there and you can come back and keep reading. And you want to click on that, you can go back, but it has the meat of the staff report is still in one document. Again, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 pages. But the more information is located in separate exhibits, if you will, including the exhibits for the most part. And again, we'll get into that. Bill's going to actually go line by line practically through the existing staff report and show you some of the things that staff is proposing we change. So there's kind of different levels of this, things that we're pretty, I'll just say passionate about changing, things where we could potentially change, but we want your feedback on. And then there may be things that we're planning today to sort of gloss over and you're like, hey, you know what? I never really liked how this worked. Can we move this or just delete it altogether? So those are kind of as we're going through this, Bill will kind of tell you, hey, we'd like to move this, or we're going to move that, or, again, stop us if we kind of get out of order there. But again, we're open to other comments and improvements or changes. So I'm going to take some notes, let Bill run through this. We will follow up then after this meeting. We'll get together, make some more changes based on how this discussion goes. I have some follow-up kind of survey questions I'd like to send out too that are a little more specific, and I'd like you all to kind of respond to those, and then we'll consider those. Our goal right now is to have this new template updated and be using it January 1. So that gives us a few months to, again, hear feedback and work out some of the technical issues we're having with maps and links and clipping things and hiding things potentially. But anyways, that's kind of the opener. And unless there's any initial comments, I'm going to turn it over to Bill to kind of run you through potential changes.
Caleb, appreciate that. Mayor, council, pleasure to be here with you this afternoon. As Caleb mentioned to you, we started this off in 18, and we really did it to get more information out to not only you, but also the public, so that they could get educated on the process. We heard from some of you a couple months ago, and that's what kind of spearheaded our effort that we're sharing with you this evening, or this afternoon, I should say. And Caleb and I have met with not only planning staff, but other city departments as well to garner some of their feedback. And that's what I want to share with all of you. And then obviously we want to get some more information from you as to whether or not you feel the information we currently have in the staff report is needed or necessary, or can we present it in a more modern way, to speak. I'd also mention to you that all the exhibits and everything that we have in the staff report is part of the public record. It goes to Laserfish from our electronics, the software, our enterprise software that we use. And that's why we want to see if there's a way we can condense our staff reports, but get you that same information, just viewing it differently. So this is the first page of the staff report. Like Caleb mentioned, I'll probably won't go through everything line by line, but there are specific sections in the code that I want to highlight and get some feedback from the city council today. So if you recall, I'll scroll down to this page here. One of the changes that we're proposing is right now we have a lot of the applicant information here. What we do in planning is as we process an application, we actually create a report out of Acela and upload that into our Project Doc software with all of that information. And then that gets uploaded as part of the public record into Laserfish, which all of you get a link to that information. And so really it's more information for all of you, but we're proposing to actually move it here at the beginning of the staff report. It seems to fit better in that section and eliminate all of the other additional work that we have to do to manually input that information from Acela. Two, we added a planner email. A lot of times we just have our number, but a lot of times people like to converse with us through emails these days. So we'll add that as an added benefit. And then also add a GIS link to, so we do have this vicinity map here in the right-hand corner. Also be nice to provide that GIS link for all of you to click on early in the report so you can see where it's situated, or if you want to blow it up and see what's occurring around there. Not only will the public have the ability to do that, but so will you and staff. So we thought that was a pretty good enhancement. Currently, this next area is something, at least I'll skip section 1. Really, it's pretty self-explanatory. That's where we just tell you what the applicant's applying for. This information really coincides with the project description that we send to the city clerk. It's part of your agenda. Item number 2 is where we spent a lot of time back in 2018, and we came up with this section specifically to get you more information and highlight issues for you so you can get you to the right sections in the staff report. So the 4 items that I've highlighted here will coincide with those maps further in the report. So back in 2018, you asked for a zoning map, comprehensive plan map, an aerial, and then also a plan development map. And we added those as section C below. Well, what we're proposing to do is maybe eliminate those exhibits or combine those, or potentially just provide links here for you to view that information rather than having the physical map in the document. Again, we are working with GIS to try to remedy that, to see if we can physically do that, but that's one idea that we want to have. And then as we get down to that section, I wanted to see if council still, I wanted to get your feedback on the number of maps that we include in our staff report, and if you still find value in that or not.
Maybe Bill, before you move on, so just to drive that point home a little bit, can you scroll down a little bit? And I know you all have seen this before, but it really frees up some space if we can just make those maps hyperlinks. We lose almost a page right there just with those 4 maps. So if we can make that a line and a hyperlink to say, hey, you know what, I wonder what we approved over the last couple of years, or you can go to the proposed or the recently approved projects link and look at that map rather than having it embedded in the staff report. So just, again, it frees up some area.
Thanks, Gail. I appreciate that. And then We just aligned things a little bit better. So for example, we moved some of the history was at the bottom of this table. We moved it to the beginning. We felt that was relevant. So you can know what's occurred on that property over the years. And this, again, aligned a lot of this with what's the applicant provides with their application submittal. We still find, staff still finds there's some value here. It gives you a quick summary of the project and you get a pretty quick overview of it. That's all concise on a table and also helps residents or neighbors that are chiming in or weighing in on applications as well. The one thing that we did add was pre-application meeting date. I think that's important. I think the council realizes sometimes we come before you and we let you know that we've talked about certain items at a pre-application meeting and either the applicants complied with our request or they haven't. It's a good, we felt it was appropriate to add that to this table so that we can convey that to you earlier in the report and reasons why the applicant may or may not want to comply with staff's recommendation.
So again, Bill, I'm going to interrupt real quick. And the other thing we talked about doing was not only putting the date similar to the neighborhood meeting date, but then also a hyperlink. So if we've had 2 or 3 application meetings with them, you can go and read staff's notes. Oh, and the first time they talked about this and asked the applicant to change that. Second time, they still hadn't changed it. Third time, they still, or whatever the case may be, but you have access then to that history of the pre-application meetings. And if you wanted to dig deeper and said, hey, this has been an issue for the last 6 months and staff's told you for the last 6 months, this is what you can expect in a staff report, you have fingertip access to it.
And then also further in the report, we also identify for you when the site's been posted, when it's been put in the paper, when it's been put on Nextdoor. Again, we're going to simplify it, simply just have site posting and provide a hyperlink to the webpage so that again, the clerk keeps track of all of that as part of their public record. And so if we create that link, someone can click on it and see that the site's been posted properly in accordance with city standards. And I'll scroll quickly down to through the staff report here, and you'll see that here. Again, not a lot of effort to put in those dates, but still, there's some work here. So again, to Kayla's point, it just allows us to compress the staff report when we already have the record, the clerk's keeping track of that as part of the public record. Moving on to section B is the community metrics. And this was something that was reviewed pretty heavily back in 2018, not only with all of you, but also with the various departments. I remember being in front of all of you and asking you what you wanted included. And we even had directors speaking at some of those hearings saying what they wanted included. But to Kayla's point, an earlier point is a lot of these comments we get are already provided separately by our city departments or outside agencies. So in our mind, it's duplicate work. We have it as part of the public record. It's included with the clerks. If an applicant doesn't give us information, we don't fill it out. So there really is no value add to it. And so this is where staff would like to really look about redoing this section or eliminate some of these items and keep the most important criteria in play for you. So for example, this distance to key services, internally, we have what we call the service accessibility report that we use with our GIS mapping. And that's where we can determine how many sidewalks, is it walkable? Are there services? Where's the nearest park? We can do all of that just by clicking on the parcel and running a report and providing that information. So again, if that is an issue with a specific project, if we're not growing in the right location in the city, we can run that model and share that with you that this is not a good location, doesn't have adequate services to meet our goals of our strategic plan or comprehensive plan. ACHD, I think all of you are familiar with their staff reports. They give us a pretty comprehensive staff report. So really the most important thing in our mind is, have we received information from them on the application? And if there's any concerns, we can highlight that here.
So again, just real quick on that one. So we are proposing to remove quite a bit of the summary information that is contained but buried, I'll be honest, in ACHD staff report. So how useful are some of those things? Again, access, it's on Locust Grove and Fairview, those types of things. I mean, it's in there. But we're proposing, again, for streamlining purposes, like Bill said, it can be found somewhere else, but it's not like it doesn't just pop in ACHD staff report. So this would make it Or are there other things regarding streets and roadways that you would want to see replace these things that we're proposing to remove?
Mr. Mayor.
Councilwoman Schrader.
Thank you. Thanks, Caleb. Thanks, Bill. This is great. No, I appreciate you guys focusing on this project. I know it's something that Bruce and I talked about quite a bit. One of the pieces of feedback I had early on in like much earlier in the year was I'm all in favor of eliminating all of this with links instead. I just want to make sure that there is a section up front with bullet points where we are highlighting key issues for discussion. So I don't want it to be that, oh, ACHD had a major issue and we only can find out by going through the link to their staff report. I think it's appropriate that they're, and again, I'm personally really a fan of bullet points and really, honestly, I like the summary we get before our city council meetings. So getting closer to that, but just having a section on the first page or second page that says key issues for discussion. So, we understand that this information is all, and I expect everyone's digging through these things anyway, but just so you're calling those things out up front was one thing I'd like to see.
Mr. Mayor, can I build on that and just a thought a little bit? Because we thought about that too. I guess what I would propose and need to fully think that through is even with the project description, kind of again, first page right there, we can describe the project and say, even put staff's recommendation right there. And then what you're getting into. Is it a recommendation for approval or denial? And if it's denial, then here's some key issues. Even approval, there could be still key issues or like our hearing outline, things to discuss type of bullet point. So that's what I guess I would propose is let's move it right to the beginning. Here's where we're at. Cut to the punchline initially. I hate to do that on one hand because you want people to kind of consider everything and almost draw their own conclusion, but we could put it right there.
Yeah, no, so Mr. Mayor, if it's all right.
Councilwoman Schrader.
Thank you. The closer you can get to a strengths and weaknesses type of assessment, the earlier on, the better. And understanding that we may not agree with your, staff's opinion. Most of the time, I think we would. But I think just highlighting those key issues and just cutting down on the length of this report, I think is going to help your department so much just to be more efficient, not get bogged down in this stuff. The only other piece of feedback I had early on, and you will probably get to it later because I think it was usually at the end, but I just wanted to get rid of all of this. I don't want to call it crap because comprehensive plan is very important, but all the verbiage in about whether it's meeting comprehensive plan policies, I just wanted actually to know if it did not meet a policy. Like that, I assume it does. So if it doesn't, that's the only thing I want to hear. That was my only feedback.
So, Mr. Mayor, just an initial response, and you're right, Bill's going to get there, and we do have something pretty innovative, I think. Just a quick comment. The comp plan isn't black and white. It's not the code. So compliance is in the eye of the beholder sometimes. So I think we're still gonna have to do some analysis of staff and say, we believe it's in compliance with this policy, but you could see that a different way. So we are still proposing to include some applicable policies there that say, here's what the comp plan policy says. Here's how we think it's applicable to this project. So we'll get through it. We can talk more about that. We can get through it. Because I think the way we have this organized now, I think will help some of that.
Yeah, just going back to your earlier point about issues or concerns, I was thinking that we could do the same thing with ACHD comments. I mean, we have that with police department or, impacts or concerns under our wastewater and water. We can do the same thing for ACHD issues as well and share that with you.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Hoagland.
Yeah, real quick. I like the key points. You do that with the planning and zoning minutes. So when I go through, I see the key points of discussion or something. I can't remember how you worded it. But that way, when you go back into it, you're going to, I want to look for that discussion and understand what was going on with that issue in particular. So if it's something similar to that, that helps because then you can go in and look for items if ACHD had an issue and whatnot. And on comprehensive plan, just to speak to that, I think we have to think about all the audiences and comprehensive plan sometimes with outside audiences, the public may want to know, does it meet the comprehensive plan? Caleb's right. It's not the law, but that is going to be part of the discussion. So I want to make sure it's informative for those who don't deal with it all the time. And Mr. Mayor, just to bring up one other item, we're on page 2 here. We have 19 pages to go. We have 2
We
other
don't.
items. So I was just
We really
curious.
don't.
Okay, I was just kind of curious, like, how fast do we need to go?
That may help. Though. Can we have another 5 or 6, 7 minutes though? Is that okay?
Yeah, that's
Just one thing back to Councilwoman Strader's comment on this entire section then. We left in distance to fire stations and fire response time, but really if you don't want any of those kind of sub summary sections, we could get rid of this whole table because we have in the next section or the section after that, click here to see fire department comments, click here to see police comments. So if we tried it for a few years, we just don't think this is helpful. And again, we left what we think are some of the key ones that come up from time to time that at a glance, okay, where's the nearest fire station or what's the fire response? But again, if that's what we're left with, there's not much of a table anyway, so we could just get rid of this whole section as
Mr.
an
Mayor-
option, but I don't know how, sorry.
Mr. Mayor, I can wait till the end for comments, or I guess I've got a very specific comment about this right now, if it's appropriate.
Go for it, Mr. Kavanaugh.
Thanks. So Caleb, I guess I'll be the other argument then on this particular issue. And I find that this document here with all the proposals to strike incredibly helpful to me, but moreover, I think that it's incredibly helpful to the public. And I think that's the big question that the council probably needs to wrestle with and staff needs to wrestle with is who are we creating this document for? To me, I think that if we are creating it for the public first, making this information available, not having to click links, not having to go hunt to get those answers should be our priority. So I'm not supportive of us striking all of these things. There may be some that you feel aren't as necessary, but I think to provide I think this was initially proposed, the term was used as a dashboard to make it easy for the public to view this information. I think that we've accomplished that. So I'd be very reluctant in trying to move away from this unless there was a compelling reason. If we're hearing from the public that it's hard to understand or they're not getting their information, well, certainly let's make changes. But I think that the section 2 is incredibly helpful. And I guess I'm struggling to understand the reason why we would want to do away with it.
So Mr. Mayor, can I respond a little bit there and just in the interest of time as well? I think what I'll do is this will be part of our survey and I'll ask you all to rank these things. Scale of 1 to 3, absolutely must keep, 2 and whatever, and 3, please get rid of. And then we'll compile that and we'll sort of do a majority rules type of a thing. And whatever you think is important information will remain and whatever scores low will remove. So that's what I guess I'd propose in this survey. We'll get more feedback that way. So.
Well, just to put a finer point on your discussion, Councilman Kavner, that's why even at the wastewater and the water comments, we struck out some of those items because like you said, people don't understand that jargon. And this is trying to simplify the document for people to understand that. And that's why Public Works was supportive of just saying, is it consistent with the master plan? Yes or no? And then highlighting concerns for you guys. So I think there's probably a hybrid here to sum up the conversation. But again, Caleb will get that survey out to all of you and we can get your feedback. We've already touched on a lot of these sections and now I'll get to kind of the meat of the discussion, going back to Councilwoman Strader's comments about combining the comprehensive plan and the UDC section together. It really is all staff analysis. And when we sat down and looked at this section, we realized that we're doing duplicate work. We're explaining how it adheres to a comp plan policy, and then we're going down and explaining to you how it meets the comp plan and then how it meets the UDC. And we could probably accomplish a lot of that. And we've said we can innovate this section and just call it staff analysis. And then I kind of mocked up a sample of what that can look like under A here. So if there's an existing residence, you can say that it's going to hook up to utilities. We have plenty of comp plan policies that encourage infill, that encourage extension of public facilities. So I thought this was a good way that we could do that and kind of bridge that gap, kind of marry those two things a little bit better and innovate that and really show not only you, but the public how the two documents work together in tandem. It's not one above the other. It's really both of them working in unison to one another. We have a vision, and then we have law that supports the vision. So that's what we're trying to do here in this new section. And then also, as you know, we have new planners. And so think about the way I'm looking at this document is it's also a good training document. You create a consistent process. A new planner that comes in doesn't know all the different code sections or what to address in a staff report. Well, now we have a lot of things built in alignment with that. And they know if something's applicable or not. The goal here is if it's not applicable, keep it hidden, right? We'll have, you can expand the field or hide the field in your staff report, and you create this template that's usually for everybody. It's consistent, it's one format, it's one layout. And if it's not applicable, you hide it. And if it's applicable, you highlight it. And you explain why it meets or why it doesn't. And you put in that comp plan policy that supports that. So any discussion on it?
So Mayor, if I can just put a little bit finer point on that, that's fine, Bill. So to Bill's comments there a little bit, this is laid out just like the UDC is. So it's everything that should be evaluated in a project. And if it doesn't apply, you just remove it. But you don't miss anything then. It goes, and it's in chronological order of how you define it in city code. So it's section 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and it's in order. The comp plan isn't necessarily aligned that way, but we have an Excel table that staff go and they type in keywords and it pops up things that are pathways and it comes up with possible policies to include when you're talking about parkways. So I really am a big fan of this change, and it structures your staff report by element, not by the document that it's being reviewed again, but against the thing.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilwoman Strader.
So if you, I'm obviously you've thought about it a lot. You're doing some soul searching about whether you really need this section. It's great that you're combining the two like the comp plan together with the UDC. I think that makes tons of sense. I guess what I would appreciate or think makes the most sense is in the beginning paragraph, again, if it hasn't already been put up in the project, the very first section, if it hasn't already shown up there, we believe these are gray areas that may not, whatever you want to say, whatever language makes you comfortable, but this project may not comply fully with the following, sections. And I think, either highlighting those or bullet points or something, because one of my biggest pet peeves is I hate having to dig through a bunch of verbiage that's been copied from the comp plan or the UDC to find out something doesn't comply, as opposed to just hearing up front, hey, this is an issue that this may not comply. And then you can kind of zero in on that key topic.
So
Maybe I could be off by myself, but that's just me.
So if I can, Mr. Mayor, Councilwoman Strader, so I think we're on the same page to some degree there. I don't know how much of that we would do actually in the summary kind of lead-in section, but we do oftentimes highlight, bold, underline those issues, and we can do that within that. So then just by scrolling, if something's bold, please read it. And then that element, that thing is an issue. We'll play with it some more. I see you're not a huge fan of that, but yes, you can.
Frankly, my opinion is that the entire section should be removed and that you should replace it with only including the things that don't comply or may not comply. You could put a link to a static, permanently existing, you could put a link to code. You could put a link to a standing website that I believe we already have that kind of goes through everything. You could have links to each policy, for the benefit of anyone who wants to read more, but I don't know. I actually think from the public's perspective, just to give a different opinion, I think the public hates going through these. That's what I've heard, especially people that are in special interest groups and stuff that look at this stuff, even people that look regularly tell me that they hate digging through lengthy reports when they just want to zero in on kind of like what the key issues are. I kind of argue the opposite from the public's perspective, but anyway, you're going to get more feedback, and I hope you guys are going to send this around for all of us to look at, because we'll dig into it.
And I would, Mr. Mayor, I would like to follow up, especially since you're my council liaison, a little bit more on that and maybe explain why having some things in the affirmative are also important to include in the staff report.
Sure.
Yeah, next section here is what you guys reference as what we update after it goes from our staff recommendation to P&Z recommendation, and then ultimately your guys' decision on applications. So these will be expandable and collapsible as well. And they'll toggle on when it moves through the various hearing stages. So I've added that. And then the other discussion is how valuable does the council feel having the exhibits in the staff report? Do you feel it's okay to have exhibits or links to those exhibits to searchable documents, or do you like squinting your eyes and looking at the exhibits in the staff report? Because a lot of times it's pretty hard to see a lot of details in the report when they're at this scale.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Cavanagh.
real quick, I'll give you an emphatic yes to be able to link that to someplace else that particularly, we do this all from home on our home computers, and you're right, there is a lot of squinting and zooming, and I'm trying to find a kind of links anyway. So I would prefer links to a more full version that we can look at.
Thank you.
Just as a process standpoint, and I'm looking at the clerk and other people related to this, is what I found in history is links become problematic the further you move away from something, and it doesn't provide access to the record when things change, get modified, get moved. Hopefully, whatever the outcome is, if links are part of it, there is a paper version that's kept in a permanent record somehow that's not link dependent, whether that's printing out I'm just worried about the long-term record not being there for some reason when we rely upon a link outside of a document.
It's a good point, Mayor, and I'll go with the clerk to make sure our record retention policy is solid that way so that any documents that are linked that way are acceptable into the future.
Yeah, it's not even just the policy, it's the practice.
That's what I'm saying, to make sure that that in perpetuity, these need to be kept, because some of these records may be transitory or 5-year or 10-year type of a thing. So we'll need to make sure whatever links we're putting in here, we change our policy to make sure that that's clear.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, next section is just agency comments. We've talked about this, we're doing this now. We just provide that hyperlink to the clerk's page, and you guys have access to the comments. That's not going to change. And then the last section, what I've done is I've gone through all the findings in the code and added these to the document. So the planner will have the ability to, again, these will be expandable and collapsible and hidden. So if whatever findings are applicable, the planner will open those up, justify those, make those findings per that project, and then those that aren't relevant, they'll just keep them hidden or collapsed. So again, it's more of a training exercise, internal process for staff. But that's all I really had for all of you today as far as the changes to the template. And with that, I'll close with my portion of the presentation and open it up for any additional questions you may have.
Thank you, Bill. Council, any additional comments at this time, or wait to get the survey for additional feedback?
Mr. Mayor, just a few more questions.
Councilman Cavanagh.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. So Caleb, Bill, I'll start with, I think, the same question that I asked in 2018, which is, who is the primary audience for this document? And I think that as staff, we need to identify who that is and then build the document around those priorities. So I've got my opinions. I'm sure staff has their opinions. It would not surprise me if council has differing opinions than me. But I think that's an important first step. I guess my questions for you is, it sounds like from a process standpoint, you're going to take feedback and then bring council back a proposed revision. Is that what your intention is?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, if I can answer that question. So yeah, we'll take the feedback we heard today, make some more tweaks to this, and then send out an updated template with an associated survey that has some questions you really didn't get in today. And then I think we'll add a question about that table too, and have you score or rank, whatever, some version of that. And then, yes, we'll send out an updated template to you all to make sure it reflects what you're thinking it would. I don't know if that will be just electronically and you can provide us feedback, or if that's another workshop. I'm open to that. But that is generally the process. Yes.
Mr. Mayor, maybe just a couple follow-ups then.
Councilman Cavanagh.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Caleb, is it staff's intentions to, a lot of different constituencies use this document. So are you planning to do some engagement with other groups as well? Planning and zoning commissioner, applicants,
Yeah.
active citizens? I mean, fill us in on kind of what your approach is. I appreciate you kind of walking us through it, but help me understand who else you're talking to.
Oh, thank you, Councilman Cavanagh, Mayor. So I'm going to roll my answer in with your first comment about who the staff report is for. And I'll just say this, and not to be curt about it, but it's to the elected officials.
Okay.
But as I mentioned in my opening comments, we have multiple folks that use this. It is for the public. It is for the applicant. And so that's why I'm using you as ultimately it's for you, but we have other readers and other users of the document. So that said, I wasn't planning to do public outreach. I wasn't planning out to go to, we can, I'm not saying we can't, but that wasn't part of my game plan. That's why we're on a pretty aggressive schedule to hopefully implement it by the first of the year. Planning and Zoning Commission, yes.
Okay.
We weren't even planning on engaging the development community. It's a lot of the same information, just packaged a little bit differently. We'll still take feedback and comments, and you can even tweak it going forward after the first of the year. If we're like, well, this didn't work how we anticipated it, we're going to change this. This isn't like our application or our code where it needs a vote. It's something we can just change if it doesn't work. We still have to have certain sections by statute and make certain findings and whatnot, but the format is, we can ebb and flow and change it as we want. I don't want to do it like that, but, and again, if you direct us to go reach out to, the BCA or whoever and talk to them about it, I'm not opposed to that, but that was not part of the game plan.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, maybe then just a comment, then I'll be happy to wrap it up.
Councilman Cavanagh.
I don't think that I appreciate a desire to try and have this completed by the first of the year. I think that's probably a self-imposed deadline, which I appreciate staff trying to kind of sync changes up with a new year. Well, let's get this right first and then launch it, as opposed to trying to get it to work within a deadline. It won't come as a surprise to you that I will be vocal that I think we need to talk to as many people that are those constituencies as possible before we launch this. They may see something that is going to be different than us, and I think seeking their feedback is beneficial. I think that we've also had some groups and citizens that have been very active in, the city council process and consider themselves to be watchdogs for our community. Let's engage them as well, because they are also going to be a big user of the document, and get it right, and then we can push it out. And I appreciate the work on this. This is not an easy task.
Council, additional comments?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Borton.
just a brief comment. I think it's great you're doing this. I know this process never ends. I love it. I love the changes. I'm fine with it. There's lots to it still. That doesn't necessarily bother me. I get the links. It's included. That's fine too. So brevity doesn't necessarily benefit me one way or the other. I think it's 100% for the decision maker. It just is. And I think you could have this done well before the end of the year. That's ultimately what it's designed for. Caleb, I think you're spot on. That has to drive it. What benefits, what helps us make the best decision, looking at all the evidence presented. That's our job. So while there might have certain benefits for secondary use by the public and the applicant, but it has to hit the marks on helping us find what we need to make the right decisions. So that's paramount. The only small thing up where you have applicant, I like to see the applicant's rep as well. Might as well put that up there too. You probably were going to, but gives us a heads up of who's going to be up here. Yeah. Nothing too substantive, but I like all the changes. There's 20 different ways to do a staff report. They're all right or they're all wrong. So it's not like we're going to find the magic one to do it. So it's incremental. Good job.
We appreciate that. And I can tell you from a lot of our applicants throughout the valley, we definitely get comments that our staff reports are the most comprehensive in the valley. Just that feedback.
Anything else, council? All right, well, look for additional conversations you have offline and see where that goes. And for the record, Councilman Pro joined us at 5:09 PM. Next item up is item 11, which is the Meridian Police Department and Idaho Humane Society presentation, discussion of proposed dangerous dog ordinance. Turn this over to Captain Burrow.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. So this is an update to our animal control ordinance, really driving at dealing with dangerous or vicious dogs and that whole process. And so that's what this update is aimed at, and getting that process more streamlined and in the hands of the subject matter experts at IHS, and out of, when it comes to a dangerous dog, out of the chief's office or council chambers, depending on which route that goes, getting it in the hands of the subject matter experts. And this also aligns our process with others here in Ada County, and provides clarity for IHS when they're dealing with these situations. And with that said, IHS is here, Tiffany from IHS is here, as well as legal, and we will stand for any questions.
Burrow, would you like to give a little more explanation for those that don't have the privilege of seeing the memo online or watching about what the
Yes.
changes are?
So this is a lengthy update that really gets into the process for declaring a dangerous dog or an at-risk dog, and then gives IHS some tools to deal with those dogs, depending on the situation. Our current ordinance is pretty vanilla, and this is much more comprehensive. And I think Tiffany can probably explain in great detail exactly how that would work. And they work within a very similar ordinance already with some of our other partner agencies.
And Tiffany, we'll invite you to give that further information.
Many pages.
Evening. So basically what we're doing is updating the ordinance. It'll be much more comprehensive, the same way Boise declares their dogs dangerous. Ada County is also has an ordinance like this, and CUNA has already updated theirs. So declaring dogs vicious is kind of an old term, so we're going to update the term to dangerous. Currently in the city of Meridian, if a dog is declared dangerous, it's euthanized or it has to be removed from the city. Both things, you know, euthanasia isn't always the only solution. And two, moving it out of the city just makes it someone else's problem. So this ordinance does allow for a dog that has been declared dangerous to meet conditions and restrictions, and the owner can continue to own that dog in the city as long as they can meet conditions and restrictions to maintain that dog. So we're abating the threat to the community with the owner complying with these conditions and restrictions. Also, the definition of a dangerous dog is much more thorough and understandable. What is provoking the dog or not provoking the dog. And so that hearing process right now, we basically say your dog is dangerous, and their only option to appeal that is they go through the chief of police. So what will happen is if we declare a dog dangerous, we say your dog is dangerous in the city of Meridian, they now will have an appeal process, which is an administrative hearing through IHS, which is what we do currently with the city of Boise. And then the burden is on me. I present my case to the hearing officer and say, these are the reasons this dog is dangerous by code. The owner has the opportunity to say, my dog isn't dangerous because of these reasons. They can bring evidence, they can bring witnesses, and I present evidence and witnesses, and then a hearing officer makes a decision. Now, from there, their appeal would go to the courts if they continue to appeal that.
Council, questions or comments?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Hoagland.
I just wanted to ask, it sounds like this has been through rigorous legal review and whatnot. There is that section about at-risk dog, and we have the definitions there, and then what it means to be a dangerous dog. And in section for dangerous dog means any dog that, and then A, B, C, and D. They talk about has previously been found a dangerous dog, or they see has previously been found to be at risk and therefore bites. And then also D, that was B, has also been found previously to be at risk and therefore inflicts injury. Can a dog be declared dangerous after the first bite? I mean, if.
Only with a substantial injury. So basically, a dog gets one free bite. As long as it's a minor bite, it didn't require sutures, they didn't require medical treatment, then they're an at-risk dog. So the second bite makes them eligible to be declared dangerous. If the owner didn't know their dog bit before, they do now after the first bite. They did nothing to prevent the second bite, we could look at dangerous dog action. So a dog can be declared dangerous after a single bite if that bite resulted in a serious injury, which is also defined by code.
Okay, Mr. Mayor?
Councilman
Yeah,
Hoagland.
thank you for that explanation, because I thought that'd be terrible to have, a worst case scenario, a child killed by a dog. Well, that's at risk now and we can't do anything.
Nope.
Yeah.
It's not gonna happen.
So that works.
Yes.
Thank you for that explanation.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Pearl.
so is the purpose of the appeal, so let's, to take into circumstance the reason that the dog acted that way, or is it an opportunity for the owner to sort of step in and mitigate? So there's an assumption, I guess, that the owner knows that the dog isn't an at-risk dog, and that's the reason for the appeal, or is it because it's the owner's opportunity to explain the cause? Like, I mean, there's some situations where it's appropriate for a dog to bite. And if they've been, if they're protecting someone or something, or they have been, like agitated or abused.
So in the code, all that's listed in the code. There are reasons dogs cannot be declared dangerous and protecting their home. If the victim's engaged in an unlawful activity, we're not going to declare that dog dangerous. But the hearing process is, a lot of people have a hard time with the word their dog being declared dangerous. And we have to tell them it's by code. So when we go to this hearing, I present evidence and witnesses that I believe this dog was not provoked and this dog caused a substantial injury. The owner has the right to bring witnesses who also witnessed the bite, and they say, no, the victim was beating the dog at the time of the bite. So the hearing process, it's an administrative hearing, so it's not in a court of law. It's kind of like at the DMV, so you have a hearing officer, but they are allowed to bring witnesses, and or they could even come in and say, wasn't my dog. You have the wrong dog. So it's the burden's on us to prove, no, we know it's John Smith's dog that lives at this address that looks like this type situation.
Council, any additional questions? Okay. Earl, you want next steps?
Yeah, I think we're ready for next steps.
So we'll be bringing this ordinance back. Bring, Mr. Neri, how about I'll turn to you, since you're the one at the mic at the attorney's office.
Mr. Members of the council, so yeah, we could put this on the agenda. We can do, as we do on a lot of these, we can put it on for first reading, with notice. Then if someone wants to comment, they can, then put it on for a second and third reading on a subsequent week. And that way there's an opportunity for input. I don't know that there's going to be much public input on this. I think it is pretty clear in the code. Again, I think the key is what Captain Stokes said is we're putting the hands of the decision making on a dog being declared dangerous or at risk in the subject matter experts that have more ability and equipped to make that decision than the police chief is. And it's no knock on the police chief, but that really isn't his forte on making that decision. And that's always been a little bit of a sore point with the police department over the years. We haven't had this come up very much, but the police chiefs have always felt like this doesn't really feel like what I do versus what the Humane Society does. And since the other partner agencies in the Valley do it the same way, we felt it was best in line to align with that.
Well, Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Hoagland.
police chief could always delegate it to a captain to make.
That has happened.
Okay, well, we look forward to this coming back in the not too distant future for that process. Thank you. All right, council, next item up is item 12, which will be the city attorney's office proposed updates to Meridian City Code. Turn this over to Mrs. Kane.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, members of council, wrong one? This one? I don't know. If you can't hear me, let me know. I'm Emily Kane. I'm a deputy city attorney here at the city of Meridian. So the strategic plan for the city includes the goal of updating the ordinances. I'll just read it. Update ordinances and simplify processes in order to improve effectiveness and provide premier services to our citizens. So part of this objective is to perform a review of our city code. So our office suggests that we do this in two parts. First, we look at the ordinances that are kind of the low-hanging fruit, things that are outdated or redundant or in conflict with other parts of the code or other laws that have since been adopted, or just more urgent concerns that we have with our code. So mostly housekeeping, but a few substantive suggestions to deal with issues that keep coming up or could come up. And then, so that's what this is today, that kind of phase one, just easier, hopefully housekeeping update. Phase two would be a more comprehensive look at the entire code and looking at places where we can streamline substantively and just make things work better. But for today, this is more of a few surgical strikes to kind of make it an easier code to use and make really less of our code. So I have a list of 25 suggestions. They're pretty quick, so I'm going to run through them. Feel free, of course, to interrupt. So the first one, we do have a general severability clause that says if any provision in this section or in this code is illegal or can't be used, the rest of it still applies. So we have sprinkled throughout our code a number of these kind of repeats of that. We really only need to say it once. So this is the first of a few that I'll call out to say I think we should just delete and refer back to Meridian City Code section 115. The second and third recommendations are to make changes in section 1 to 2. This provision is related to penalty provisions, so a violation of city code. And this section needs quite a bit more work, but for now, if we just delete one or two sentences, we can avoid some of the conflicts that we're seeing with the previous code, which also relates to penalties. So I'd recommend that we take out that first sentence that says that the penalty is applicable to every section of the code. We say that earlier and we say it differently, so it is confusing. Then currently section B says that no more than one recovery shall be had against the same person for the same offense. There's a kind of, I haven't heard of this being an issue, but there could be an issue with we aren't allowed to prosecute one person for the same offense, even if they do it twice. So I'd recommend that we take that out. Moving on to number 4, it relates to the corporate seal of the city. I've spoken with Chris about this some time ago, but it says that we put the city seal on all of our official documents and records. We don't actually know what that is, and we only put the city seal on things that the clerk is certifying. So I'd like to clarify that or recommend that you clarify that. The clerk also does not handle warrants, which this section says that he does. So I'd recommend we take that out. Section 5 or number 5. This is just a title change that has happened since we adopted this code originally. The community relations specialist is now the community relations policy advisor. So number 6 is a substantive update to our procedure for requests for reconsideration code. And I guess I say substantive, it really just clarifies what we already do. It does make some changes to the substantive provisions of the code, though. It really clarifies when administrative remedies are exhausted and we don't end up in this weird situation where we're wondering if we should again have the applicant request reconsideration, including on our decision on a request for reconsideration. We've ended up in some weird spirals. We also clarified some of the if-then situations at the end, including modified decisions. When we modify our decisions, we want that to also end in a request for reconsideration before it goes to appeal. And then it also clarifies when the countdown begins or when the clock starts ticking for the appeal. And number 7 is this is a sneak preview of 9 and 10. We are going to recommend deletion of our regulation of subdivision model homes and subdivision real estate sales offices. This is really covered enough by the building code and any other applicable codes. We don't need to issue temporary use permits for these. And it's really become a hassle for the development community as well as the city clerk's office. So we're going to recommend deletion of those. Number 8 is sort of a substantive update. We aren't sure where our time limit for a promotional sales unit fell out, but at some point it left the code. Originally, promotional sales units were allowed for 160 days out of the year. And this is a temporary use that's put on by a bricks and mortar business. So like a sidewalk sale or just something outdoors, something to promote their business, or Christmas tree sales, or the garden section at the grocery store or something like that. So that would be allowed for, allowed for a larger part of the year than most of our temporary sales types, but for whatever reason, it's not there anymore. So we'd recommend that we put it back. Number 9, again, is we recommend that we delete the temporary use permit requirements for subdivision model homes. 10 for subdivision real estate sales offices. Number 11, we have still on the books a licensing requirement for adult entertainment establishments, and the clerk's office does not wish to do that. They are not doing it, and nor should they. This is now generally illegal. There's been quite a bit of case law in the U.S. Supreme Court regarding adult entertainment establishments, and our ordinance is really outdated. We don't use it anymore, but it's just sitting on the books and it can go away. We did in the UDC reference the definition that was in this Title III, but we have repaired that in the last updates to the UDC. So we really don't need it at all, and we should get rid of it. Likewise, number 12, there is a provision on the books requiring the city clerk to license mobile home parks, or rather permit them, and we don't do that, and we don't want to do that. So we'd recommend that we delete those permitting provisions. All right, number 13, we make it illegal to interfere with or not let a city official enter onto one's private property if they're enforcing the nuisance code, and really that conflicts with the Fourth Amendment. So we'd recommend deleting that. Number 14, we have the city clerk regulating or issuing exemptions of solid fuel heating appliances. And the city clerk doesn't do that. The fire chief or his designee does that. So we'd recommend that change. 15 and 16 are severability clauses, recommend deletion of those. Number 17 is a substantive suggestion, but there is a Ninth Circuit opinion that suggests that a curfew could be a violation of the First Amendment if someone is out doing First Amendment activity past curfew. So this recommended addition would cover that. So it would say the curfew does not apply if someone's doing certain activities like working, or they're out with their parents' permission, or engaging in First Amendment activity. I would recommend that we delete the designation of an underage violator as a juvenile delinquent. We really don't need to do that anymore. That's an outdated reference. I'd recommend that we delete the provision that makes parents responsible for the actions of their children. Certainly civilly, that's still the case, but that's also outdated. Finally, under the curfew provision, the city penalties for curfew violations are now preempted. There's a city code provision that says it's an infraction to violate a city curfew and arrest is prohibited. So this would repair that. Number 18, I'd recommend that we delete our provisions regarding sales of cigarettes and tobacco. There's now an Idaho code provision that says local ordinances regarding tobacco sales are prohibited. There's already a penalty in Idaho code for purchase of and possession of tobacco by a minor. So we really don't need this provision. Number 19 is we're getting into the traffic section. So there's a provision that talks about speeding in alleys and parks. I'm not sure why those were ever grouped together, but park speed limits are covered in Title 13 of City Code. So I'd recommend deletion of that, as well as deletion of the definition of alley, because that's already defined in Idaho Code, and that presents a conflict. We have a U-turn provision. This is already covered by Idaho Code, as is passing in a no passing zone. I'd also recommend that we move a random reference to impeding traffic up to the description of restrictions. Moving on to number 21. Our negligent driving provision talks about racing and rapid acceleration. These are already covered by Idaho Code. So this would actually pare it down to just be about negligent driving. Number 22 is, and 23 are again severability clauses. Number 24 is an outdated reference to an EPA drinking water test fee. We do still charge this fee as part of our water rates, but it's no longer 25 cents. And we have a number of kind of pass-through fees that are covered in our water rates, and there's no reason to call this out separately. Finally, number 25, I'd recommend that we delete in Title IX we authorize ourselves to regulate our own water system. Idaho Code already allows us to do that, so I'd recommend that we delete that. Any questions?
Thank you, Emily. Council, any questions?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilwoman Strader.
thanks a lot, Emily. Makes a lot of sense to me. I guess the only thing I'd be curious about, obviously we're relying really heavily on Idaho Code, right? The Idaho Code has us covered. So is there just not being familiar, not being an attorney, is there a way that changes to Idaho Code are easily flagged for you so you guys can see, like, for example, if there was a change to Idaho Code, that redundancy could have been helpful. Maybe then it's not. So how do we what's our net to catch all the changes to Idaho Code?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Strader, it's a good question. It does require attention each legislative session to what they're doing. We kind of we try not to make specific references to Idaho code where we can avoid that, because it does, you're right, it does change even if they renumber it. Now our reference is outdated. We do it to a limited degree just because we do want to direct people to a specific section, but where we have these redundancies, we don't need it. You're right. There are times where we maybe want to put it back or adopt our own city code provision that covers something that Idaho code doesn't, but it does really just require us to stay on top of the legislative developments.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Neri.
Mayor, members of the council, Councilmember Strader, maybe to add on to what Emily said, we have a lot of eyes on the legislature every year, on the different departments, our department, other agencies, other groups that we all belong to, Chief of Police Association, municipal attorneys. So there's very rarely going to be changes that we're not aware of through some form. The redundancy sometimes is more problematic because we're inconsistent with the Idaho code, and the code may preempt it. And so we have a code that says this is illegal, and we're training our officers on something that's illegal that actually the state has already now usurped that and said, no, it's not. And so now we're in conflict. So I think getting rid of the redundancy really helps. I'm not real concerned that things are going to get missed because there's a lot of attention paid to every single thing the legislature does, big and small. So I don't really foresee that happening. I see more of the potential conflict where our code is outdated. Like a lot of these are outdated. They've been superseded. They violate other code. They violate the Constitution. So I think getting rid of the redundancy is a bigger plus than a negative.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Strayer.
Yeah, I think that makes good sense. I guess I would get some comfort if your department had like an administrative process that you received a summary of all of the code changes at the end of each legislative session and you had a process to review all of them. So I just want to make sure we're not saying there are so many eyes on the legislature, there's no chance that we wouldn't have missed something, and then just have some weird reference not work or have something that, you know, they've removed from code. We somehow didn't catch it. And then something we were relying upon to eliminate our own law, you know, isn't there anymore. That's all.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I'm not going to say we'll never miss anything or that's never going to happen, but it would be pretty unlikely for that to happen without us seeing it, whether it's, again, we do get summaries from other agencies. We do get summaries from other entities on what their perspective is. We do get that. Again, our departments are very engaged in their subject matter areas with other groups in the legislature and lobbyists and all of that. So I'm not going to say it's never going to happen, but it would be fairly unlikely to happen.
I would say it is not happening just from the standpoint of that's part of the reason why we're here is there are issues that are things that have been missed or whatever the case may be, because the more you have in code, the more likely you are to miss things no matter where those changes occur. I also know that several years ago, there was a concerted effort to try to eliminate areas in our code so that we were not citing under city code, that we were citing under state code, because it was the preferred way for court cases and other reasons. So we do want to direct back to the state code wherever we can, not have something on our books for a wide variety of reasons. Really.
Well, one additional reason on top of that, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, is if it's a criminal offense that we were to arrest somebody, and it's a city code violation, we pay for that. We pay the jailing cost for that individual for that charge. If there's a comparable state code, we don't have to pay for it. So that's why we tried to eliminate a lot of these city codes that were redundant, because we really want to use the state code and not arrest somebody on a city code that could have been covered by the state, because the price of jailing them per day is significant. It's more than a hotel.
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Hoagland.
I just noted something on number 5. I was curious when you're going through that designated positions in the mayor's office, and we're updating the language because there's a title change. I thought that was just kind of odd that we would put into code what the positions are named, as opposed to as council, the mayor's elected official, and we control the number of positions based on the budget that we allow the mayor's office to have. Whether they call them chief of staff, special assistant to the mayor, assistant to the mayor, what have you. I was just kind of surprised that we are changing titles in code as opposed to just letting the mayor decide what they are. And we just budget according to what council approves, that there's going to be 5 positions in the mayor's office, and how he names them is up to the mayor at the time, but I don't know, Mr. Neri.
Mr. Members of the council. So when we had this conversation a year and a half, almost 2 years ago, when we changed this and added them, really it's part of it's the organizational structure we have. So we have certain positions in the mayor's office that report to the mayor's office that are not at the will of the mayor and are simply treated as general employees, and some that are at the will of the mayor. So this was simply a method to identify which specific positions are in that category versus the general employee category.
Mr. Mayor and Bill, thank you for that explanation. That makes sense because when there is a change in the office, yeah, some people know with that title I have, yeah, I can not be working next year. So, okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Additional questions or comments?
Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Cavanagh.
Thanks. Emily, Bill, great work. I appreciate this. I went through this when it was sent out last week and appreciate with the recommendations. Emily, in kind of your opening remarks, you kind of flag this as low hanging fruit. So the more meatier items, when should we expect to have you back going through those items?
Mr. Mayor, members of council, Councilman Kaffner, I would say the effort is maybe 10% complete. So really, if it were a major priority, that's something that could be done within a year or sooner. I would say a year is maybe a good estimate, though I could speed it up if you'd like.
And Mr. Mayor, maybe a response if I may.
Councilman Cavanagh.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Obviously, I'll leave that up to Mayor and Council President to decide, but maybe a suggestion is if for these meatier items, it may make sense to bring back, a chunk every quarter or a chunk, every 6 months as we work through that. I worry what I think is the right intention, which is here's all of these items that we're working through, but that could be somewhat overwhelming to any one of us. And so maybe trying to kind of parse that out for me would be helpful. So just maybe a selfish ask if that's something we could look to explore.
Absolutely. We're going to give them all to you right before the budget. So it will be, don't worry, timing is going to be perfect. No, it will be coming back. I think, I know that part of what we want consistency throughout our entire code. So she may have to go through it all and then bring them back in chunks.
Okay.
That was kind of the intention. We want to make sure that there's, we don't bring you back one and then 5, we realize we need to go back and change one again.
Okay.
So, but yes, it will be in chunks.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Emily. Appreciate the great work.
Appreciate that.
All right. Next steps on this item from timing.
Mayor, members of council, the next step would be for me to bring an ordinance and you to adopt it. And I could do that as early as 2 weeks from now, if you're ready.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Emily.
Thank you.
Next item up is item 13. Councilman Hoagland.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we go into executive session per Idaho Code 74-2061D.
Have a motion and a second to go into executive session. Is there any discussion? If not, clerk call the roll.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Strader,
Aye.
Burnt, Burrow,
Aye.
Cavanagh,
Hi.
Borton, Hoagland.
Aye.
All ayes, motion carries, and we'll move into executive session.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Hoagland.
I move that we come out of executive session.
Have motion second, come out of executive session. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, nay. The ayes have it. And we are out of executive session.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Hoagland.
move adjournment of our work session.
Have a motion to adjourn. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and we are adjourned. You ready for the next one? Should be. Okay. Council will call the meeting to order. For the record, it is October 18th, 2022 at 6:12 PM. We will begin this evening's regular city council meeting with roll call attendance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councilwoman Strader,
Here.
Councilman Burnt, Councilwoman Burrow.
Here.
Councilman Borton, Councilman Hoagland.
Here.
Mayor Simmons.
Here. Next item is a pledge of allegiance. If you'd all please rise and join us in the pledge. Our next item will be the community invocation, which tonight will be delivered by Christopher Ellis with Capital Church. If you would all please join us in the community invocation or take this as a moment of silence and reflection. Charles.
Mayor Simpson and council members, if you would bow your heads. Lord, we just take this time to just take pause and just thank you and reflect on your graciousness, your mercy, your gift of wisdom. And Lord, we just ask that you would just continue to guide, continue to direct our lives. Lord, we just thank you that you paint the skies of this great state of Idaho, that you grow the grass, and that you have given us such a rich land. And Lord, we just ask that you would just continue to breathe on it, continue to allow your mercies to flow on it. Lord, I ask that you would just continue to do a great and mighty work. And Lord, I pray that you would just rest in this council as they move forward in deciding the direction of this great city. And Lord, I ask that you would just give them wisdom. You just breathe on them, give them rest, give them peace. And thank you for a abbreviated night for them. In Jesus' name, amen.
Next up is the adoption of the agenda.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Hoagland.
before I make a motion to adopt the agenda, I just want people to know whether they're online or in the audience that item number 1 is going to be continued due to noticing error. That will be for November 1st is when that will be heard. Just to note that. So, Mr. Mayor, I move adoption of the agenda as published.
I have a motion and a second to adopt the agenda as published. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the agenda is adopted. Next up is the public forum. Mr. Clerk, do we have anyone sign up under this item?
Mr. Mayor, we did not.
Okay. And with that, we'll move on to our action items for the evening. First item up is item 1. Mr. Hoagland.
Mr. Mayor, I would move that we continue the public hearing for SHP 20.
I guess we need to, if we're going to continue, we need to open it first. So, Mr. Jerry, is that correct?
We actually can't open it since we noticed it, so we are just moving.
Okay. Okay.
Well, Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Hoagland.
I would move that we continue the public hearing for SHP 2022-0010 to the date of November 1st, 2022.
Have a motion and a second to continue this item. Is there any discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the public hearing will be continued. Council, anything under future meeting topics?
Mr. Mayor,
Councilman Bourne.
it's already might be on the radar, but it's that time of year where golf course topics come up. And I know goods and bads from this current year and the rate structure in particular, I think will come before us, hopefully, or at least we can have some discussion at a workshop before the end of the year about what worked well, things we can make better. Does council have an appetite for doing a resident rate and a non-resident rate, kind of broader policy questions. So hopefully that can get on a workshop discussion. Probably already is on the radar.
Anything else? Then do I have a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and we are adjourned.